Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and still with you on today's edition of Cairo Local Time. And as promised earlier today, of course, we will be discussing the role that Egypt is playing as it has assumed the presidency of the African Union and how it has played a very big role in the African continent to develop relations between the African nations. And I'm now delighted to be joined this afternoon in the studio by my guest, Dr. Abdul Ghaffar Ahmed, who is the Assistant Secretary for Youth at AfroAct and the President of the African Youth Voice. Dr. Abdul Ghaffar, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Doctor, first and foremost now, President Sisi, of course, as the head of the current African Union, has participated in a number of summits, whether we're talking about the Russian African Summit or the G20 Summit held in Japan or the G7 Summit held in France, all for the African voice. How do you see the participation, and how do you see this participation as enabling more horizons for development of the African countries?
Actually, first of all, so happy to be here. I really like being in a national night because speaking English and it's an advantage because of my family has the advantage to watch the show. Actually, the president Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is kind of a legend. One day, not in Egypt but in Africa, we will have a statue named President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Why? Because as an African man living in Egypt, I had a lot of opportunities that I can't have it in other countries. Because as a foreigner, when you're studying in Egypt or studying in other countries, you just focus on your studies and other things. But here, you have a lot of advantages in everything. You have a lot of opportunities in everything. First, I should say, a lot of conferences, a lot of care about African studies, a lot of development happened. And one of these development is on Friday, actually, we're having a celebration of African Youth Day. So I was surprised that when I went there to ask about the ticket, I realized that the ticket of the Africans as named as the Egyptians. I feel like, wow, that's an achievement. I mean, when I heard the foreigners are paying like £160, I think, but you as an African, because you're from Africa, you're paying £20. I think that's different. That's an achievement. So because this is the real change we want. It's not like Africa and that's all. No, we need the change
on the ground.
Action.
Yes.
Even not Egypt, everywhere you go as an African, there will be some changes that before there's no change. So I think those relations and those development that happen in Africa in general will have a lot of time in decades in Africa. Because me, I remember, and a lot of Africans remember. And one of the achievements I have is that the AfroAct I'm talking about.
Yes, what is AfroAct?
Yeah, I'm very, very happy, and it's my pleasure to be Assistant Secretary for Youth at the AfroAct. Actually, the idea came from the founder, Dr. Hussam Darwish. He started with the president of the Fattah al-Sisi, and he encouraged him about Africa. The president gave him a lot of courage about Africa. So he think of why. Okay, he has an idea and an expert and experience in international expert. So we think of making an Africa what it deserves. Because they say in African Union, Africa we want. No, the actual slogan of AfroAct is Africa deserve. So he tried to connect people from different parties, from different background, from different
countries,
African countries. And expert in AfroAct there's 30 experts in different fields, marketing, tourism, house real estate, in every different part. So when you gathered as an AfroAct with the youth leaders from different countries, we have 16 different countries with 20 youth. So we gathered together to make Africa what it deserves. I'm always saying that sometimes Africa we want, but now it's Africa deserve, because Africa deserve better. Africa deserves to live in peace. Africa deserves everything because we have everything. We have the natural resources. We have the everything, minerals, everything.
How do you see some of the cooperation agreements that have been signed between African countries, especially as Egypt is the head of the AU? There has been a move to increase trade exchange between African countries, more intercontinental trade, as well as connection between African nations.
Actually, one of the intra-African trade that happened last year at I think 50th settlement, I was a volunteer in African Union at the time, and there's a lot of interaction trade between Africans. And what I'm saying actually is that the Egypt are not trying to make a connection with Africa. No, they are making connection with Africans. Because even like in Africa general, like West Africa and North Africa, they're not I mean, connected together. But the leading of the president of Egypt is making connection through the Africans. So this relationship between Africa is not just from Egypt to Africa, it's rather from Africa to Africa. So as you can see, the Russian summit that happened with the leaders of Africa, they are with a country like Russia. We know that Russia is a big country. So having a relationship with a country like that is like we are playing a role for a future for Africa. Like we are on our own, and we are having a partnership with everyone who want to care or everyone want to share. So
why do you see lots of countries are now interested in Africa and the change in the way that they approach African countries? It is no longer a relationship of just taking of the raw materials, but now they want to invest in African countries, set up their companies and start a different kind of relationship with African nations.
you know why? The real reason is because firstly, our African country is like a country with, as you say, natural resources and stuff is available, but they don't see it because they just feel like Africa, Africa. But through a lot of summits, a lot of conferences, the Egypt shows the world who is Africa. And an example of the AFCON that happened, and when they see how African are organizing and opening for football. So for that, encourage them that now the Africa we think before is not the Africa that is now. So we have to invest. Because when you feel the side effect of Africa has been, for decades, been there, but now they have been seeing the real Africa. So that's why all the world, not even even the Europe's, everywhere, they are trying to invest in Africa because they know that Africa is future. And yeah, Africa is future.
Now, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi always speaks about the role of women, the role of the youth. We need to empower African women and youth and really change how women and youth are dealt with, are educated, are empowered, whether it is socially, economically, or politically. How important is that, and how does that fit into the whole sustainable development agenda for Africa as developed by the African Union?
Actually, me personally, I was motivated by the president because when I attended the World Youth Forum, when I saw the youth of the world, how at the age of 21, 22, how they are making a change globally, so it encouraged me more that yeah, I see the role of the youth. And one of the role of the youth, the president gives youth here in Egypt a lot of opportunities. Like there's a lot of like conferences that happen with youth, and there's one I asked the president, I think in Arabic, they said, it's al-Rais. It's kind of,
Yes, yes.
I really love that.
Ask the president.
In Nigeria, actually, we need that. We need to hear the youth because the youth now has started awareing, they have started believing that they can do something. And that's one of the benefits, or one of the, I can say, one of the advantage in AfroAct, because AfroAct have youth, 20 youth from different countries, and youth are not normally youth, are youth leaders. So we have to work together with the experts and the youth, because combination of the experts and the youth, what will make Africa the Africa we want. Because as we know, African agenda is 2063, right? So we are talking about 50 years maybe ahead. So we will be the president at the time, we will be the leaders are the youth, right? So like making the youth more qualified for that, what make the sustainability of Africa.
Yes.
Because we're not talking about just like 2 years, 3 years of development and that's all. No, we are talking about sustainability.
Yes.
A year that we will enjoy, those are coming after, and those are coming after. That's what we need in Africa. We need sustainability of everything, not only in something goals. I know that something goals are the most common, but actually we need sustainability in the relations. As we have seen now, the relations between Egypt and Africa is very tight. We are one. We are not Egypt and Africa. It's Africa and Africa. One Africa. So those sustainability of relationships, what make Africa stronger? Because
Yes.
as far we united together, as far we're stronger together. So that's one of the rule that I'm seeing in Egypt. Because I'm living in Egypt. As a youth, I'm still studying actually in Azhar University. But I had the opportunity to attend a lot of conferences as a youth. So seeing what's going on, knowing what the life, what the world is going on, give me more power, give me more encourage to be the president of African Youth Voice.
Yes.
And African Youth Voice, we are a youth entity that we deal of how can we youth have a role too in this African development. Because you cannot say just the president and just the expert. No, we youth have to think because the youth have a play, they have a role to play.
Yes.
So that's one of the main agenda. We have to focus on the youth.
Indeed.
Africa.
And how do you see Egypt's positioning in the African continent as a doorway for whether it's Western European countries to come into the African continent to start investing more, whether it's in west or south or east of the African continent?
I'd say Egypt is the heart of Africa and the gate of Africa, yani gate to the Africa, because everything is available actually in Egypt. So and for now, the conferences, as I said, make a gate. It's opening a gate and more, because even me, when I said to a lot of people, a lot of experts, they'll say, I want to invest in Africa. I want to invest in Africa because of how they hear about it in Egypt and how they know that how Africa is great. So for that, the connections and the presidentship of the Egypt makes the Africa like a gold. So everyone, a gold is something everyone want to have. So that's why it opens a lot in Western Africa. It's opened a lot in Northern Africa and a lot of ways of Africa. So it's a really great opportunity, and we have to use this opportunity.
Yes.
We can't just let this just the effort of the president and the effort of the like Rwanda. Rwanda is one of the fastest economy in the world, not even in Africa. So those we have to change not about cultural change, but experience change. Me as a Nigerian, maybe I'm one of the strongest economy in Africa. Why not Africa be the strongest economy? As Rwanda, one of the fastest economy in the world, why not Africa in general be the fastest economy in the world? So we have to unite the effort and make the way to the Africa together.
Indeed. Right. Also, the Aswan Forum for Sustainable Peace and Development is going to be held next December, which is a very important platform, really, for dialogue and political development and interaction among leaders and decision takers. How do you see the importance of holding such kinds of gatherings? The African Union itself holds several annual meetings, but these kind of gatherings have a different role to play in developing relations.
Actually, one thing that I was so amazed about in this forum, when the president announced the forum at this Russian summit, he announced it globally that we are having a summit in Aswan on December stuff. So that gives people to think, what is Aswan? What is up? What do you know about Africa more? So those stuffs make a lot. Sometimes we have a lot of meetings, as you said, a lot of conferences, but each conference has its own goals. So the Aswan forum is different from the normal conferences. Why? Because firstly, you're talking about the delegates of Africa will be available, and there's an invitation from over the world, because he is inviting the president of Russia. The president of Egypt invited the president of Russia. So that means it's making it expanding, that how it's supposed to be. So for that, we have a lot of advantages. Media, through the media, because at the event, I know there's a lot of media coverage and stuff, and a lot of people will hear about a forum, as one forum, and it will make it more globally that it's how to be. And I really hope that the Aswan Forum will be like another, a way to make Africa great.
Indeed.
Really.
And also the launching of the Africa Agenda 2063 and the free trade zone in Africa were also key milestones in the African efforts to reach the aspired regional and economic integration that they seek. How do you think Egypt's presidency of the African Union helped achieve these two very important milestones?
Actually, as I said, the interaction between African countries, and as you can see, even there's and what happened, the president of Egypt make a deal with some of the presidents in Africa to understand each other. So for that, in trade that we're talking about is what we need now. I have a friend that traveled to Germany. In 1 month, he traveled to like 10 countries.
Yes.
But in Africa, when you're traveling from Nigeria, from Egypt, there's a lot of procedures,
Exhausting.
it costs. But if we have the free trade and free traveling, we are one Africa.
Yes.
Why can't we work as one, as a room, just enter and come back?
Yes.
So this trade of Africa will make Africa more united.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about me anymore, it's about we.
Yes.
So
indeed.
I think this is a big agenda, and I always thank the president, not because I'm not flattering, because I saw what I saw. I give an example with the pyramids, not even pyramids, a lot of things that I've been seeing,
Yes.
a lot of opportunities, not in Egypt, in Africa in general.
As a whole, indeed. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Dr. Abdul Ghaffar Ahmed, the Assistant Secretary for Youth at AfroAct and the President of the African Youth Voice. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for all your insight. Thank you very much, Dr.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's edition of Cairo Local Time. You're in the company of myself, Angie Mayer. Many thanks for joining us.